Welcome to probably the most important tales from the table that I have ever done up until this point. Knowing your birth story, in my opinion, is probably one of the most important life hacks that you could ever partake on. There was a gentleman I was listening to on YouTube, and he said, the only story you should ever really be reading in your life, or the only book you should ever be reading in your life, is the story of you. And far too often, we're born, we're brought into this world, and this incredible, miraculous, beautiful event is kind of forgotten. It's not really talked about. Maybe the joy of seeing, your firstborn child, or the joy of all the family members getting around, after the baby has done whatever medicine decides to do to it. But nobody ever talks about or really explains how you were brought into the world, what happened after. Nobody's looking at astrology. Nobody's looking at human design, anything like that, and explaining, like, this is the energy that you've been born into right here. You can work with it, or you can get worked by it, right? And there are a lot of people that aren't going to resonate with what I'm going to say today. I'm going to share my own birth story, and that's totally fine. This channel isn't for going viral. It's not for subscribers. It's about truth, and truth doesn't really care what everybody else is dancing around, or what everybody else thinks, or what everybody else follows. Truth just waits for resonance. So that's why I say in a lot of my videos, if this resonates, great, take it. If it doesn't, leave it. Doesn't matter to me. This is just a metaphysical cafe. You can come here at any point in time and listen to what I was saying at one point in time. And this is merely information that is expanding your consciousness, and in all likelihood, your subconscious as well. So I'm saying this today because I have 3 children. And every single one of my children, their birth story was different. My first child, born in 2018 in a hospital. And I was kind of hesitant to do a home birth because this is my first child. I've never seen what's involved in birthing a child before. And as much as I know about health and wellness, I wasn't egotistical enough to compromise potentially the birth of my first child, and also compromise the health of my wife. So, once again, it's like you're told all these things, like, oh, birth, pregnancy, it all has to be left up to the doctor. These are the most knowledgeable people. This has to be left to the medical system because you don't know anything about childbirth, right? Here's a story for you. Our nanny, I think she's like 72, 73 right now, Colombian. She's lived here, I think 15, 20 years, something like that. She doesn't read or write, okay? She has been a nanny most of her life, ever since she came here to the United States. She doesn't drive, all right? She birthed all 7 of her children by herself in her home. No medical practitioners, no midwives, no doctors, no nurse practitioners, no nurses. She birthed 7 children by herself in her home. Nobody delivering the baby but her. She would just catch the baby, ready to come out. She did all her pushes. Nobody checking her dilation. Oh, we're 10 meters, centimeter. Oh, you can't do this. You can't do that. We need more oxytocin, right? You don't even need an education to deliver a child. This lady she can't read or write. She doesn't drive. She is one of the most incredible caregivers, has the biggest heart that you have ever seen in your life. She birthed 7 children all by herself in her home. No outside medical influence, and they're all happy and healthy today. Nobody has any complications. I don't know if she got them inoculated or vaccinated. I don't know what the laws or what anything is in Colombia at the time. I mean, she's 70. Her kids are, I think the oldest one is like 34, 35, or maybe in their 40s, somewhere around there. But that's for another video. So some like vaccines or whatever. So this is my point. I am moving in the direction of becoming a more sovereign being. Every single minute, every single hour, every single day, I am looking at what I can educate myself and rein in and keep in house rather than exposing myself to corruption, exposing myself to disappointment, exposing myself to problems. Here's another great quote. Grant Cardone was being asked about homeschooling his children. And he said, well, I mean, one of the biggest things that I look at is if someone's going to fuck up my child, might as well be me. Because then I look in the mirror every single day and say, what can I do to fix it? Where if you're sending your kid off somewhere every single day and the teacher is messing them up or the school system or the kids on the school bus, right? Like, what do? You're not going to sit on the school bus with your child every single day. You're not going to sit in class and be like, teacher, you don't say that to my kid. Teacher, pay more attention to my child. Teacher, my child's raising their hand. Call on them. You can't do that stuff. But when you are in control, when you make the decision to be sovereign and say, I'm in control, everything begins and ends with you. And there are a lot of people that are afraid of that. There are a lot of people, I don't want that responsibility. I know people like that. I know clients like that. And that's fine. Everybody has their path. So if you're this far along in the video already and I haven't really said anything about my birth story, then congratulations, you are one of the people that wants to expand your consciousness and possibly become more sovereign. And I applaud you for that. So let's get to my birth story. Born May 15th, 1978, Cheektowaga, New York. My mother and my father ended up separating in 1999. I was 21 years old. So it's just kind of like, I remember them sitting us down and saying, hey, things aren't working out between your dad and I. They haven't for a while. And we're going to separate. And me and my brothers just kind of being like, okay, yeah, we get it. If things aren't working out between you guys anymore, then it is what it is. My mom was crying. My dad, you could tell, was visibly upset. And so it wasn't there was no emotional like trauma, I guess you could say, because we're all old enough and we kind of understood. But later I started to learn as I was talking to my mom, alone at night sometimes if I was hanging out with her, or the story I'll tell you about going to Don Shula's when she came to visit me down here in Florida. I started to realize what an incredible woman she was, number one, and oh my goodness, the things that she went through, number two. I remember when I was younger going to the cemetery frequently to on specific days, on birthdays and whatnot, going to my brother's grave sites. Now, my mom was pregnant 8 times. All right. She lost her first 5 babies. The first 3 she lost due to miscarriage. The next 2 were stillbirths. Now think about that. Okay. And I had no idea about any of this till I was maybe like 30, 31. I mean, we would go and visit their graves and it would just kind of be like, these are your brothers. You're like 4 or 5 years old. Like, what do you know? You're just a trusting and you're accepting. You're not really processing, right? So my parents would lay flowers and, kind of have a moment, and me and my brothers would just be standing there fidgeting like, I don't really get what we're doing here, but okay, I guess these are our brothers, and they never were, or they never are, or something's going on. But then as you get older and you start to process these things and you start to understand the circle of life and death, etc., now you start to kind of ask deeper questions. And when I was asking my mom about my two older brothers that were stillbirthed, that's when she told me, she goes, "Oh, I was pregnant 3 times prior to that, and I had 3 miscarriages." So I'm prefacing all of this so you understand when I get to my birth story how it affected me then throughout my entire life. All right. I have one living older brother right now. And what I was told from my mom was that when she was pregnant with him and carried him to a full term, that she had become so anxious and so hysterical, thinking about all these what ifs, what if my child is born still again, et cetera, that the doctors actually put her under anesthesia, and then he was delivered via forceps. Okay. So this was very common in the 70s. I don't know so much about the 80s, but I think in the 60s and 70s, this was very common, where the doctor was just like, "Oh, we're putting you out, and then I'm going to bring your baby out into the world with these very hard metal claws." All right. Look up a pair of forceps. They don't look gentle. Okay. So my brother was born that way. And then obviously so was I when my mom was pregnant with me. My mom was put out, at a specific time. She was anesthetized, and then the doctor came in and ended up bringing me out through the birth canal with a pair of forceps. All right. Now, I wasn't told this till I was probably 36 years old, 37 years old. All right. And I didn't know what I know now about the human body. So I'm 47 right now. I didn't know what I know now about the human body in order to kind of like correlate it with my birth and my birth story and how I came into the world and why I'm so distrusting of the westernized medical system. So think about this for a second. You're all nice, warm, and cuddly in an aqueous solution inside of your mom, and you're getting ready to come out into this world. And your first introduction is a piece of cold, hard metal. Okay. And then you're ripped out instead of pushed out. Maybe I'm not ready. Maybe I'm still kind of like, oh, thinking about it. Okay. You have no choice. You're coming out right now. All right. And my mom was out, so she doesn't really know what happened to me. My dad wasn't in the birth room. My mom doesn't really know what happened to me afterwards. I think I would have to do some serious regression in order to go into that and figure out what happened to me afterwards. But clearly, whatever did happen to me was not fun, because I always had this sick, anxious feeling every time I would go to a doctor. And I also have what's called white coat syndrome. What's white coat syndrome? If I were to take my blood pressure right now, it would be the epitome of blood pressure. 113 over 67, 113 over 72, 119 over 80. It would be the epitome of blood pressure. You get a nurse or a doctor to take my blood pressure, I'm cool as a cucumber. They slap that cuff on. I feel my heart rate go a little bit higher. They start pumping it up. It starts going a little bit higher. And they read my blood pressure and they're like, "You're 146 over 92. And you're a health professional?" And the crazy part about it was every single doctor would be like, "Oh, you have high blood pressure. You have high blood pressure." And then I would go and take the blood pressure by myself and it would be completely normal. So when I got my life insurance done, when we started having children, the lady that came and took all of our health information, did like blood sugar, et cetera, et cetera. She was like, why is your blood pressure so high? And I said, I have white coat syndrome. And she looks at me and she goes, oh, that is a very real thing. Thank you for telling me. And I was like, you believe in it? Because there are a lot of doctors that don't believe in it. There are a lot of people that are like, oh, that's BS. And she was like, no, this is a very real thing. Okay, what can we do to get you to calm down? So I'm talking to her. And as soon as I expressed it to her, as soon as I told her, this is what I feel, and this is why I'm feeling it, everything normalized. She took my blood pressure, and it was like 119 over 78, something like that. Heart rate completely normal. And she's like, there. She's like, that's better. But I used to get a physical for football in high school and college every year. And the doctors would be looking at me and they're like, you're 18, you're 19, you're 20, you're 21. You have high blood pressure and you're an athlete and you lift weights and you do all this conditioning. Like, this isn't good. And yeah, I had high blood pressure in my family, but to have it so young, it's very uncommon. And it was all because I would get so incredibly anxious and nervous as soon as they came around trying to measure me. Okay. So clearly something had happened, right? Now here's another story. In I want to say 2011, I go to a chiropractor in Plantation, Florida, just to get a regular adjustment. And this guy's adamant, adamant, adamant. I'm not going to see you unless if you do x-rays. And they didn't say anything about this on the telephone. They get you while you're there because you're there already. So, and I'm like, I don't want x-rays. And they're like, no, you need to have x-rays or else I'm not going to see you. Okay, how much are the x-rays? $75. I'm like, all right, whatever. Let's just go and do it. So we get the x-rays done and I go back out into the waiting room and then the chiropractor calls me back in and he's like, come here, I want you to look at this. I want you to look at something. And I'm like, okay. So I go in and he goes, you see this fracture right here on your C2? This is the second cervical vertebrae. You have a fracture here. What happened? And I'm like, I don't know. I have no idea what happened. What do you mean? And he's like, were you in an accident? Did you have a fall, break your neck? I'm like, no, I didn't. None of that ever happened. And he's like, well, you can clearly see the fracture. And I'm like, yeah, I clearly see it. It was a couple of millimeters, something like that. And I'm like, geez. And he's like, yeah. So he's like, does your neck bother you? I'm like, my neck bothers me all the time. And the reason why I went to the chiropractor is because I fell asleep in a nasty position. Somehow my pillow had ended up scooting underneath my back and my shoulders, and I fell asleep like this. So my head was cocked, and what ended up happening was a condition that's called torticollis. I woke up, I was in so much pain. I could not believe how stiff my neck was. It was giving me headaches, and I'm feeling back there, and I'm like, oh my gosh, man, it feels like a cement post. My neck feels like a cement post. So I ended up calling around. I was new to Florida at the time. They recommended this gentleman, and I went to go see him. So then I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, cool. Like, I guess something happened. And it didn't really dawn on me. I wasn't as wise. I wasn't as mature. I wasn't as inquisitive in my body as to what happened or why this had happened or like what could this be from type of a thing. Now, I did get in 2 car accidents when I was younger, when I was 17 and when I was 18. The first car accident, I was going like 15 miles an hour and I just bumped this guy. The second car accident, I ended up sliding off of a blustery, snow blown over road into a ditch. And I don't know, I was probably going maybe 30, 40 miles at the hour at the time. But I never had any problems. I never got whiplash. I didn't have any pain in my neck after those events. They were more so just the one sliding into the ditch was kind of silly. And the first one, the guy was like, I hit a Monte Carlo. His bumper didn't even move, and he was like, oh, there's nothing. He's like, let's just go. Let's just go. He's like, I don't want to deal with any insurance companies. There's nothing. I'm fine. And I was like, okay. So there's no issue there. But my neck always bothered me. When I was young, I constantly had motion sickness in the car. I constantly had motion sickness on a boat, and I had air sickness. And I'm talking about to the max, where I would get in the plane and we would sit down, we would take off, and as soon as we started going up, I would just be like, kind of like, whoa, like what is going on? I could not have any type of centering or anything like that. My parents would constantly be like, just look, focus on a point, like look straight ahead, breathe. It didn't, nothing helped. I couldn't go on rides in Disneyland, none of that. Anything but walking, riding a bike. If I was in control, I was okay. But if I went into a car and, if I looked right real quick and the person drove left, it would take me like 30 seconds to a minute to get my bearings, like everything would start spinning. I remember when I got into high school, there was a girl who sat behind me, they arrange you according to last name. And this girl, Andrea Kwiatkowski, she sat behind me and I remember I'm just sitting there. It's like maybe the first or second day freshman year. I'm sitting there in homeroom and I'm just like, da, 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 da. And all of a sudden, I feel this person's hand wrap around my entire neck and their fingertips are almost touching themselves. And and I'm like, what the heck? She goes, your neck is so skinny. And I'm like, thanks, kind of, right? And I remember my mom, she used to buy me dress shirts, and until I became like somewhat of a man, like 17, 18 years old, I had to get the smallest neck dress shirts that they had, and it still looked like I don't know, like a pencil is sitting inside of a huge cup. My neck never grew. My neck, as much as I was exercising and lifting weights, my neck never grew. When I started playing football in high school, it took until sophomore year and when I had to consistently go to the chiropractor because I kept getting stingers, either playing or just sleeping in bed. Okay. So I'm putting all of this stuff together like the last 2 or 3 years as I started to learn more about the body, especially about the atlas and the axis, which is your first and second cervical vertebrae. All right. I start putting all this together and everything just starts clicking where I'm like, oh my God, I was delivered via forceps. You can guarantee that that cord didn't stop pulsing. My umbilical cord didn't stop pulsing before I was separated from mom. And then God knows what they did to me after. All right. There was also this other situation where I was maybe 9 or 10 years old. My mom never left. My mom was with us every single day, every single minute. If she was going somewhere, we went with her, all of that stuff. She was a stay at home mom. She went on a vacation with her friends and I think her sisters to Mexico for like 4 days. Before she left, she told my dad, remember, if Christopher gets sick, his lymph nodes in his neck have a tendency to back up. Do not take him to the hospital. He's fine. So what ends up happening? Somehow I get a cold and my dad sees these lumps in the right side neck. Okay. And he panics. He takes me to the hospital. And what they ended up doing was putting me in one of those chairs where they strap your arms down. So I'm sitting there like this. Okay. Strap here, strap over my legs, strap over my forearms. Okay. And I you can't move. And then they put a strap around your head. So you're just in there, waiting to be electrocuted or something. And what they did was they took a needle and they stuck it in my neck to do a culture of whatever this is. Okay. And it was one of the most frightening things in my entire life. Once again, I realized that they're just helping, but it's the trauma, right? as a result of the help. You're too young. You don't know what's going on. Somebody's shoving a massive needle in your neck, and you're just told to stay still. If you can picture that or imagine that, right? So I remember that very vividly. And my dad ended up getting a whacking when my mom came back. Because I had this big bandage on my neck still. And what ends up coming back? Oh, it was just lymph fluid. There's nothing to be concerned about, blah, blah, blah. Right. So there's that then that was occurring in and around my neck. So I want to say in the last 4 or 5 years, when I really started to understand, okay, clearly my atlas is misaligned. Clearly I have problems with my C1, maybe my C2, et cetera, et cetera. As I started to work on it and rearrange things and heal whatever was going on with my neck, everything started to happen kind of in reverse. First, I started to get airsick again a little bit. Then I would go out, on a surfboard or a kayak, and I would be seasick for a little bit, but then it would go away. And then I was fine with that. Everything was all right. Then started problems was when I would work on my neck in specific areas, I would get vertigo. 45 minutes later, like I could set a clock to it. All of a sudden, like I would just start getting anxiety. I would start getting dizzy. And I would just sit there and observe it all because I knew that it was a result of something that I did. And I would sit there and, as unpleasant as it was, I mean, I'm talking, I only had maybe 1 or 2 vertigo bouts that lasted like 4 to 7 hours. That's not fun because you're just laying there. And even if you're laying there and like not moving your eyes or your head or anything like that, you're still off. Like it still feels like your head is in a fishbowl. You can't turn your eyes too quick. You can't really sit up because you know that you're just going to go back into the mix of things, right? But I knew that if I'm poking the bear, right? If I'm poking and things are getting all riled up, I know that I'm on the path to getting better and being well. And today I'm happy to say I have no problems with anything motion related. Especially, I want to say almost 2 years ago, I went kayaking with my daughter in Kailua over to Flat Island. And when we were there, this storm ended up rolling in. And I was like, we better get back quick soon, baby. Let's go. So we get into the kayak. And as I'm paddling with the kayak, this storm is coming in and just pelting us. And all of a sudden, the waves pick up, and we're going like this in the kayak. And the wind was blowing so hard that I was literally pointed into the wind, and I'm paddling as hard as I can, and we're still blowing sideways into the rocks. So that was really interesting. There was no fear of us getting hurt or anything like that. But that's when I was like, wow, like I'm fully fixed, fully healed, because there's no way I could have done something like that 5, 6, 10 years ago. Oh my gosh. I would have been so sick. It would have been really bad, really, really bad. So everything starts to make sense from a standpoint of why my neck has been so weak, why I had so many problems with it, why I just never trusted medicine. Everybody knows from my knee pain Bible, when I was 14 years old, my knee started to hurt. Went to the 3 different doctors, three, and every single doctor took an x-ray of my knee and they said, "Your knee looks great. We don't see any pain, any problems in here anywhere." Wow. Okay, great. And my mom for a little bit started to think, are you really hurt? Are you making stuff up? It's like a Munchausen syndrome type of thing. And she would see I would go and play with my friends, and I would just stop and be rubbing my knees, and then the next day I would be rubbing my knees. And it all of that starts to come from a lack of support, feeling a lack of support from the people that are supposed to be helping you when you're too young to help yourself. All right. So there's that then starts as a result of how I was brought into this world. The other thing too is because the forceps are going to semi block all of the beneficial bacteria I'm supposed to be gathering as I'm coming out of the birth canal, what ends up happening as a result of that? I have had gut problems from as long as I can remember. And it's taken the better part of the last 4 to 5 years to fix those as well, to where now I am no longer sensitive to specific things. I no longer host SIBO or candida the way that I did. I no longer have malfunctioning or dysfunctioning adrenals as a result of that. I no longer have fatty liver disease as a result of that, which I had, and all that contributed in conjunction with absorbing the emotions from the people that I worked with on the table for such a long period of time. Uh, it contributed to my adrenal fatigue that I experienced, stage 2 adrenal fatigue. But I can remember as going back as far as I can, like I would be playing, and if I played too much without any type of food, my blood sugar would drop so hard that I would start to crave like milk. I would start to crave sodas, and I drank all of that stuff unashamedly all the way up until I was 17. When I was 17, a good friend of mine, Aaron Orcott, which if you ever watch this video, thank you, bro, he looked at me buying a soda from the machine one time in the high school cafeteria, and he was like, "Dude, you're an athlete. You should never be drinking that shit." And I was like, "Why?" He goes, "It's got caffeine. Caffeine dehydrates you. Plus, it's just sugar and acid." And he's like, "Did you ever read the ingredients?" I'm like, "No." My mom and dad, they would family, we always drank this. We always drank pop. I'm from Buffalo, New York. We called it pop. We didn't call it soda. So I for Advent that year, I quit soda, and I never went back. And so I was 17 years old the last time I had a soda. But then, you get into later years of high school and then college, and you start drinking beer and hard liquor and box wine, right? So I can remember when I graduated with my master's from the University of Hawaii, and I was just starting to work at a physical therapy clinic. I would wake up early in the morning, 6:30, 7 o'clock. And man, I just could never get going. I was always so tired. At this point, I'm 27, 20, 27, 28, somewhere around there. And I started to think like, man, this is a real big problem. Like, I wonder why I can't really wake up. I wasn't drinking coffee, anything like that at the time. And then I ended up getting another job because I wasn't working enough hours. I was used to working 60 hours a week. So I wasn't getting enough work. I went and found another job, and I would go to that job in the morning and then go to the clinic in the afternoon. And I would always arrive about an hour, hour and a half before I needed to start. I would go in one of the back rooms that nobody ever used. It was always super dark, and I would fall asleep on the observation table. I was so tired, I couldn't keep my eyes open. I would fall asleep for that hour. I would get up, and then I would go and do my work, and I would be okay. And then by the time it was like 6:30, 7 o'clock, I'd be dead again, like ready to go to bed. And I'm 27 years old, and you start to think like, shouldn't you have more energy at that point in time? And when I ended up finding William Walcott in his metabolic typing theory book was when everything started to make sense for me. And I ended up changing into more of a ketogenic-ish diet. And that is what ended up bringing me out of that state that I was in, which I now look back and consider to be pre-diabetic. I was probably 27, 28, very fit, six pack, very lean. I'm talking about 5, 6% body fat, somewhere around there. That was measured in what's called a bod pod. Okay. Look it up. So I was pre-diabetic by the time I was 27, 28. I'm convinced of it because of the wild swings that I had in energy. I was also gluten intolerant. I would have a sandwich. I would be blowing the doors off of anywhere that I was at for the next 3 to 4 hours. And I was, why can't my body digest a sandwich? You know, this is before I even think gluten intolerance was a thing. I'm looking maybe 2005, 2006, something like that, which actually puts me at about 25, 26. Yeah. something like that. So I look back on that time, and switching over to a ketogenic diet was actually what saved me. Now, there are a lot different things that I use today to help people reverse any type of pre-diabetes or diabetes, but going from low fat, high carb to high fat, high protein is exactly what my body needed. And as I ended up reducing the fat around my liver as a result of eating that way, everything cleared up. And now I was running off of a much cleaner fuel, but also a much more natural fuel. I remember sometimes late at night, if I was hungry, I mean, this is all I could really afford at the time, I would buy taro pancakes from Foodland, and I would make myself taro pancakes. Like, that's what I considered to be a healthy snack late at night. I didn't really know anything about nutrition. All I knew is that I didn't want to get fat, so I didn't eat any fat. The body doesn't work like that. It definitely does not work like that, especially for such a long period of time. So I hope that this makes sense. I'm not sure where I'm going to go after this right now. After I'm trying to think if there's anything else that's essential that you guys need to know. It's just connecting the dots. Talk to your mom, talk to your dad. Were you there? What went on? Was I happy after? Did I calm down? Or did I continuously cry? Was I immediately vaccinated? Did the doctors and nurses take you away from me? Was I born at home? Was I born in the back seat of a car? Because we couldn't get to the hospital at the time. All of this is relevant information. And because hindsight is 2020, then look for the connections in your life of your birth story. Okay. And that information becomes now power, a foundation that you can build off of to reverse engineer everything that happened in your life and help heal yourself. This is why it's essential. This is why you need to know. Talk to other people. How was I as a baby? Was I happy afterwards? Or was I constantly crying? Did I have colic? Or was I healthy? Was I spitting up until I was 12 and a half months old? Or, did that stop around 6 months like normal babies do? Was I breastfed? Or did you bottle feed me from, some of these or a lot of these formulas? They have heavy metals in them, a whole bunch of other stuff. Doesn't matter how closely they say it mimics formula mimics mother's milk. It does not. Okay, it does not mimic mother's milk. Please, goat milk, raw cow milk, nothing is breast milk unless if it's coming from your breast or your wife's breast. Okay, like, let's just end that conversation right there. Ask your parents what your diet was like, what things you liked and disliked at the time. Okay. And then think about how supportive everybody was around you when you were growing up, family and friends, you know? And then you start to put the pieces of the puzzle together. And one of the big reasons why I sat down and wanted to do this is because of a great product that I ended up finding out about called Soul Print. All right. And what this book is, I love their marketing. It says, for anybody who has children or once was one. So I used to be a child, I think. And, I now have children. So it appealed to me. But what they have is they have these beautiful watercolors, and it is a book that contains astrology, human design, and what they call soul themes in here. And it is basically like a manuscript of your child's birth story, the energy that they were born into at that point, what the stars look like. They have birth charts in here for astrology, human design, and then a mandala for the soul themes and whatnot. But it's very beautifully done, and I bought one for my daughter, Emerson, as you can see. And I think that it's absolutely incredible. I think it's amazing. You can get it at www.mysoulprintbook.com. I'll leave the web address in the comments or in the description. But really beautiful on the back here. Every child arrives with a unique cosmic blueprint written in the stars. This beautifully crafted guide weaves together the ancient wisdom of astrology, the profound insights of human design, and the transformative teachings of our soul themes to reveal your child's soul purpose, gifts, and life path. More than a book, this is a timeless heirloom that celebrates your child's divine essence and guides you in nurturing their authentic self. So I thought that that was pretty amazing and pretty cool, and it's very beautifully done. I plan so I got it for my daughter. She's 7 years old. So children we develop. We learn everything. Primarily, 95% of our programming happens between 2 and 7 years old, right around there. So I sit down and every once in a while I read to her about herself. And again, this comes down to a system of beliefs. I started feeling energy in the body around 2011. Okay. And then it was around 2017, 2018, where I started to feel the energy from the moon. And then as I got into astrology, I started to feel the energy from every single planet. Whenever there was a big transition or a conjunction or a square in my chart, I'm sitting here like the Hulk, like I just want to pop out of my skin and I'm like, man, what is going on? And there are people that'll just wake up and express that because that's what they're feeling, where it needs to be transmuted. It needs to be transcended. You need to use that energy for good, for change, instead of just yelling at your coworkers or coming home and kicking the dog. So that's why I love astrology primarily, because that energy that the planets are emitting it should be used for you to transform. It's kind of giving you that nudge, it's giving that push. It's saying it's time. It's time for you to do this now. Take the first step and like Julia Cameron says in her wonderful book, The Artist's Way, leap and the net will appear. Where so many of us, we feel that energy and it's just kind of like, oh, but I can't because of this. Oh, I can't, my bills. I can't because there's no way I could ever be an artist and make as much money as I'm making being a computer tech, right? And it's kind of like, well, no, your soul contract was to make enough money to be a computer tech. So then you have some time to become an artist and start marketing and selling your work. And now this is what we do. And a lot of people don't want to give up that safety or security for what they truly love or for what they truly came here to do. So what ends up happening? You sign up for another go around of the same bit. Okay. And then you go another year where that energy comes through. And now it's like, okay, do you leap or are you still afraid? Right. So I think I'm going to end it there. If you stuck with me through this the entire time, I truly hope you enjoyed it. I hope it made a positive impact in your life. And I hope that it just helped you understand a little bit more about what's going on in your body as you start to unpack your birth story with your mom and your dad and anybody else that you decide to share it with. All right. And now we have a better understanding. We've raised our consciousness and we can better serve not only ourselves, but those around us. Okay. And that's all we can ever do. Like Ram Dass said, the only thing that I can do for you is work on me. And the only thing you can do for me is work on you. So let's get to working. Love yourself and love yourself some more. Aloha.